Today's daf is Masechta Menachos Daf Lamed, and we will begin from Daf Chav Amid Beis, Amma Rav Yosef. So Chav Amid Beis here by the yellow, Amma Rav Yosef. Let's make it a little bigger. Okay, here we go. So the Gemara begins. Amma Rav Yosef, and today's we're going to just be discussing the halachos of writing the Sefer Torah. Amar Rav Yosef says, Hani tarti mili Amar Rav b'svarim. There's two halachas that Rav says regarding a Sefer Torah. V'tanya to Yufte, and we have a brisa that refutes the opinion of Rav. Chada, the first thing that Rav said, Hoda Amar Rav, that Rav said, Sefer Torah sheyesh boy shtei to'yis to'uyis b'chol daf v'daf. On every column, daf is a column. Every column has two mistakes. Let's say it was written by an amateur, and every daf he made two mistakes. Yisakin, you can fix that Sefer Torah. Shalosh, but once you have three mistakes on that page, on that column, so you have to hide the entire. I don't think you need to hide the whole Sefer Torah, but I think it means you just hide that piece of parchment that has a few columns. So if there's one column that has three mistakes, then you have to hide the whole piece of parchment. It can't be used for the Sefer Torah. Tanya tiyufta, but then we have a contradiction, a brisa that says the opposite. Shalosh yisakin. If you have three mistakes, you could still salvage it. Arba, but if you have four mistakes, yiganes, you can hide it. So therefore, the brisa seems to be a little bit more lenient than Rav by giving you leeway that even if you have three mistakes, you can still hide you can still fix the mistakes. Now, we're going to learn a very important point, and that is there are two types of mistakes that you can have. Here in the picture, you see Vayigdal Hayeled, right over here in the middle. Here, there's a mistake over here, two mistakes. So the kind of mistakes that we're dealing with over here and that we don't allow you to fix is if it's missing something. For example, Vayigdal Hayeled, and he spelled Paroi missing an ayin, Bas Paroi, right? Moshe was brought to the daughter of Pari, is missing an ayin. That's one mistake. And then you have a yar bisiv loisim. You forgot the word bisiv loisim, so you can correct the mistake if it has two mistakes on this page by just filling in what you mistakenly spelled or missed a word. But if you have three mistakes on the page, then it's no good. That's called a mistake that you left out a word. However, if you added a letter, instead of writing Avraham, you wrote with an extra vav. So then, no matter how many mistakes you have, you could always correct it. It doesn't make the Sefer Torah look bad. All you got to do is just scrape it and erase the extra vav. And that's what the Gemara is about to say. Before the Gemara says, Amar Rab Yitzchak, Tana, we learned in a brisa, Im yesh boy daf achas shalema. If the Sefer Torah has one page, one column that's complete, so let's say there's a couple of columns that have three mistakes, but then you have one daf that has zero mistakes on it. So then matzelis is kula. Then it could save the whole thing. So if you have columns that have four mistakes, but then you have one column that has no mistakes, so then you don't have to yigones anymore. It's on condition that most of the Sefer Torah was written correctly. In other words, you can't have 500 mistakes on a page and then expect one perfect column to save the rest. That's not going to work. Amma le Abaya Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asked the question to Rav Yosef. We said that if there's one perfect daf, it saves everything else. That's correct. What happened if that daf is not so perfect, but not enough to be yigones on its own. For example, if it isbuhu daf sholosh to'is, if that had that good column has 3 mistakes, what would be the din? Does it save the whole thing or not? Do we say, do you need a perfect column in order to save the rest? Or maybe you have to have it perfect enough that it doesn't have 4 mistakes, but 3, it doesn't bother us. On Malay, so Rav Yosef answers, since you have permission to fix it, you can fix it, and then it doesn't have any mistakes, and then it can save the rest, even if the rest have more than 3 mistakes. Now, what kind of mistakes are we talking about that can passel the Torah? If you're missing words or missing a letter, but if you added an extra letter into a word, less lamba, there's no problem with that. You could always fix it. Chaseris, my time of law. What's wrong with a missing? Because if you have too many mistakes and you're always filling in words on top of the line and filling in letters, it looks like a leopard. It doesn't look nice, as you can see in the picture. If we had too many mistakes over here, the ayin and the sivloisam, and then another one over here, it would look, and another 4th one, that would really make it not nice, and it would disqualify the writing of the Sefer Torah. Says the Gemara, a story. Agra, the Chamua de Rababa. Agra was the father-in-law of Rababa. Havile Seris Besifrei. He had a Sefer Torah that had too many letters in there, so you could kasher it. Also, Lakami de Rababa. So he came to his son-in-law. Amalei. So his son-in-law Rababa told his father-in-law, Lo Yamra, and we didn't say there's a problem with a Sefer Torah that has mistakes. If it's missing words or letters, we go to Amid Aleph. Avol Chaseris, but if it has too many letters, less lamba, there's no problem. All you could do is just scrape it off, and that's fine. So that was the first thing that Rav said, that we found a brisa that this disagreed with Rav. There was another thing that Rav said. Rav said, if someone's writing a Sefer Torah and he's up to the last, page, so to speak, he could finish that Le'enei Kol Yisrael, the end of Parshas V'Zayis HaBracha, even if it's in the middle of the column. So that's it. But I'll ask you a contradiction. This brisa seems to not agree with that. If you're writing a Sefer Torah, and you're up to the end of the Sefer Torah, you should not finish it in the middle of the column, as if you would finish a plain chumash, which a plain chumash in the time of Chazal was just a cloth with just one of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. And that was used maybe to teach or something like that, but it doesn't have a Kedusha Sefer Torah to it. Like, here you can see in the picture, a Bereshis, Shmos, some people have the Haftarah written that way. So there, a Chumash, it doesn't have all the halachas of a Sefer Torah. There you could finish in the middle of the page. But a real Sefer Torah that has everything into it, Mekatza v'hoylech atzoy fadaf, you can shorten it all the way till the end. In other words, you have to finish on the bottom of the page. Rashi gives you a drawing over here. You just finish it till the end of the page. Here you have a picture of how it could possibly look. So here you make the line smaller, so you can finish Yisrael at the end of the page. So now, says the Gemara, so this was a contradiction to Rav, that Rav says you could finish it in the middle of the page. So is this a contradiction to Rav? And says the Gemara, you're right. Rav said you could finish the middle of the page if you're writing a chumash, but not if you're writing a whole Sefer Torah. Says the Gemara of a Sefer Torah, Rav say a koises Sefer Torah? Didn't Rav say you're writing a Sefer Torah? And says the Gemara, b'chumashim shel Sefer Torah. Rav was referring to a part of a Sefer Torah, the chumash of a Sefer Torah, but not the whole Sefer Torah. So Rav essentially agrees with the brisa. Says the Gemara, is this brisa true? Rav said, Le'enei Kol Yisrael be'emtza hadaf, that Le'enei Kol Yisrael could be in the middle of the page. And says the Gemara, no, that statement of Rav is Hahi be'emtza shita itmar. That's Rav saying that it could be in middle of the line. It could be in the middle of the line, but it doesn't have to be in middle of the page. Rabbanim amar af be'emtza shita. Rabbanim say that you could finish the Sefer Torah not only in middle of the page, but in middle of the line. It doesn't have to be at the end of the line. Rav Ashi amar be'emtza shita dafka. It could only be the only heter is you could finish the end of the Sefer Torah in middle of the line, but it has to be at the bottom of the page. That's the halacha. Be'emtza shita dafka. Only it has to be on the bottom of the page, but you could finish it in middle of the line. New Gemara. Amar Rav Yeshua ben Ba'aba, Amar Rav Gidel, Amar Rav. Rav said another thing. Shmoina Pesukim Shebetorah, the last 8 Pesukim of the Torah, which discusses Moshe's Rabbeinu passing away. Who wrote it? So first we learned the halacha. Yochid Kara Oisa Bebeis Knesses. You're not allowed to divide it. It's the last 8 Pesukim. Normally you could divide an aliyah for 3 Pesukim. Here you have to have one person read it because it may not have the same level of kedusha, so to speak, as the rest of the Sefer Torah, and we want to show that this part of the Sefer Torah is different than the rest of the Chumash. And in fact, some are learned that Yachid Karais Bebeis Knesset, you don't even need a tzibur to be at the Kriyas Torah. Even a Yachid could read it in shul. Normally, we need Kriyas Torah with 10 people. Here, you could have even an individual. So, come on, did Rav say this statement? Did like Rab Shimon? Did Rav not paskin like Rab Shimon? And therefore, that's why it's different. Because why? The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, the last 8 psukim say that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. After Moshe Chai, if Moshe was alive when he wrote that, because of Yamasham Moshe, and he's writing that he died, that's a lie. That's not. That's Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't write something that's untrue when he's writing it. Ela ad kan kosav Moshe, mekam be'elav kosav Yeshua, div Rabbi Yehuda, v'ami Rab Nechemya. Rabbi Yehuda says that, right, the last 8 psukim was written by Yeshua ben Nun. And because of that, now Rav makes sense, because Rav says, because it's written by Yeshua ben Nun, we have this halacha, yochid kara oisum bebeis knesses. So, and Rav must not agree with the following Rab Shimon. Amar Elai, Rab Shimon, after Sefer Torah chasar echad ksiv, if the Torah was written one word, is it kosher? How could you say that Yeshua wrote the last 8 psukim of the Torah? Ksiv, the pasuk says, "L'koyach ha-sefer Torah zeh v'samta Moshe." That Moshe Rabbeinu says, take this complete Torah and put it by the Aron. So the point is that Moshe wrote the entire Torah. So how did he write the last 8 psukim? He wrote it a little different. Normally, when Hashem told him what to write, Moshe repeated it, and he wrote it down. He said it out loud with his mouth. Ela ad kan HaKadosh Baruch Hu omer o Moshe omer v'kaisev omer. He would write it, or omer v'kaisev, or he would say it first and then write it. Mikan ve'elach, but from the last 8 psukim and on, HaKadosh Baruch Hu omer, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would say to Moshe Rabbeinu what to write. Well, Moshe kaisev b'dama. Moshe wrote it with emotion. And he did not write it. By saying it out. He couldn't. I guess couldn't bring it himself to say that he died. We find this in the other areas of Tanakh, where Baruch ben Nuriya, who was the Talmud of Yirmiyahu, it was so awful what was written in Yirmiyahu that when Yirmiyahu told what Baruch to write, he said, "I wrote it, but I didn't repeat what Yirmiyahu said." Yirmiyahu told me what to write, and I wrote it down. However, I didn't repeat back what Yirmiyahu said. The concept is that sometimes something is so awful to say with your mouth, you just write it down. Havda like the Holocaust. Anyway, and Lema, so Rav, who said his opinion, the like Rab Shimon didn't pass Rab Shimon, because according to Rab Shimon, Moshe Rabbeinu actually wrote the last 8 letters of the Torah. And says the Gemara, feel the tame Rab Shimon. Even Rav could go according to the Rab Shimon. Hoyel ishtani. Since Moshe wrote it differently than he wrote the rest of the Torah, that's why Rav said the halacha would be that Yochid Kara Oisoi Bevesa Knesses. So that would be Rav could go on that piece. Rav said another thing. If instead of writing a Sefer Torah, or hiring somebody to write the Sefer Torah for you, you just bought a second-hand Sefer Torah, and that's how you make your mitzvah. It's like grabbing a mitzvah from the street, and you don't have the same reward as if you would put in the effort to write your own Sefer Torah. But ksava, if you wrote it, if you wrote it, it's as God considers it as if you were makabel it from Har Sinai. So you makabel it from Har Sinai. Now we're going to learn. So if you bought it from the street, it's not as you can see in this picture. If you wrote it, then Hashem considers it as if you accepted from Har Sinai. So if you actually write your own Sefer Torah and you learn Safras, it's a big thing. To be able to write your own Sefer Torah, it's as if you accepted the whole Torah. You went to Har Sinai and retrieved the Torah, like Moshe Rabbeinu. However, if you bought a Sefer Torah and you had to fix one letter of the Sefer Torah, it's as if you wrote it. That's what the Gemara is going to say. Amarav Sheshes im higia. If you corrected one letter of the Torah considers it as if you wrote the Torah, as if you wrote it yourself, even if you bought it from the street. So that's the Gemara. New halachas regarding a Sefer Torah. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Let's get the picture up. Yeah. When you have a piece of parchment, that's called a urea, you can put an average piece of parchment, you can put 3 columns, as you can see in the picture, 3 columns. However, you shouldn't put more than 8. Maximum you could put in a column is 8. But don't, even if you have an average piece of parchment, don't put 8 there if you're making the columns too narrow. And even if you have a wide piece of parchment, right? So don't just put 2 columns there and make it very, very wide, because all these things make it very hard to read. So basically, in an average piece of parchment, you could have roughly between 3 and 8 columns. You can make a piece of parchment from 3 columns to 8 columns. But if you're less than that or more than that, you shouldn't do. And just because if you have, let's say, a large piece of parchment, don't add 8. Don't add 8. Because don't add 8 if you're making the columns narrow, because that looks like a letter. And even if it's a large piece, if it's a small piece of parchment and you're making wide columns, don't do that. Because your eyes will gloss over and it's very hard to reach. Ella kagain gimel pamim. You do the column should hold mishbachasechem 3 times. In other words, it should be able to have this mishbachasechem here. This is the width of a column. Mishbachasechem 3 times. This one over here. This one over here. So you could write over here. You can have mishbachasechem. That's very, very good. That's the width of a column. And then the pasuk. But then we're going to learn that, let's say you're up to the last pasuk. We said you have to end it at the end of a page. So then you can write the whole pasuk in one column. That's the exception on the last page. The first, the Gemara says, Nizdamna lo yiriya bas tesha dafim. Let's say you have a column, a piece of parchment that could hold 9 columns. So you can't put 9 columns in one piece of parchment. Don't divide it into where you can put 3 on one side and 6 on the other. You put 4 on one side and 5 on the other. Make it more or less even. But then, what are we discussing? The largeness of a column and the size of a column. In the Chumash, in the Sefer Torah. Sefer, the last page of a Sefer Torah, you could put afila pasuk echad, afila daf echad. You could put one column in a one column and one pasuk in that last page. Okay, afila pasuk echad, afila daf echad. You could put one pasuk and even one column. Pasuk echad, I could understand you could put one column in that last piece of parchment, but can you put one pasuk? If you write one pasuk on a piece of parchment, you're not going to get to the bottom. Ella, what the Bryson means to say, you could write a pasuk echad bidaf echad. You could write one pasuk that will take you up an entire column, like you see in the picture. You have the whole pasuk taking up the entire column. That's the exception for the last page. Now we go to the dimensions. Shir Gilyon, how is the margins? Shir Giloyan, Milmata Tefach, let's see the picture. Okay. So the Shir Gilyon is Aleph, you have 3. From the bottom is a Tefach. Okay, a Tefach from the bottom, 3 inches, 3.5 inches. From the top, you have 3 fingers. You have 2 from the top, from the top, from between. See, he doesn't have it yet. From the top, you have 3 fingers, right over here on the top, and then there's something in between. Let me get this bigger. Something in between. So then, between the 2 pages, right, is 2 fingers. That's what the Bryce is going to say. Let's see. Shir Gilonian, the margins are Milmata from the bottom Tefach, Milmala Gimel Etzbois, Bein Daf Ladaf between column to column, Kimloi Revach Shtei Etzbois. You have to leave 2 fingers. Uva Chamashim, and we counted that. If you're writing just one part of the Sefer Torah, one of the 5, Milmata Shalosh Etzbois, Milmala Shtei Etzbois, Bein Daf Ladaf, Kimloi Revach Roichev Gudol. From between one page to another, you could have the width of a thumb. Bein shita the shita, between 2 lines on a column. So this we don't see anymore. Kimloi shita, you leave a line, you double space, but we don't double space anymore. In the time of the Gemara, that was the requirement that between one line and the other line, you have to leave an empty line. Bein teva l'teva, kimloi ois katana, between 2 words, you have to leave the maximum of let's say a yud in between, the size of a yud in between 2 words, so they're not so close together. Bein ois la ois, but if you're writing letters between one letter to another letter in one word, all you need is a hair breadth width to divide one letter to another with. Says the Bryce, Al Yamai Odom Hasaksav. Don't make the script small because you need space in the bottom or space on the top, or you need space between lines, or you need space between one parsha and the next parsha. So basically it means like this. Sometimes you forgot to make double spacing. So you're going to make, so here's, you wrote something, and now you're writing over here in a tiny, and make it smaller in order so that you can have a double space between the line above. It doesn't look nice. Like you can see over here, you have sometimes the right, and all of a sudden you have somebody writing smaller, like in a smaller font, in smaller print. That doesn't look good because you need space. Okay. Again, let's say you need space between line to line. Okay. Now, what happens in between parsha to parsha? Sometimes you're making it between one parsha and another parsha, or parsha stuma. So again, you don't have to make it make things smaller, make the print smaller. Says the Bryson is down in loy. Let me just see. Oh, let's see if we can have this. Okay, we're going to have this. Let's say you finish the line and you have a word is five letters. So what do? Can you go in between the margins? One word. So if it's a 5-letter word and you can put 3 letters in the margin and 2 letters outside the margin, that's okay. But you can't have it the other way around. Most of the word is outside the margin. Then, but if it's a new word, right? Let's say it's a like al, right? Al, it's a 2-letter word. So we said you could have 2 letters outside the margin, right? You could have 2 letters outside the margin. Let's say the hadama. You could have the mem hey outside the margin. Shartem is wrong because you have 3 letters outside the margin. But if you can have 2 letters outside the margin, that's okay. But if it's a complete word like al, ayin lamed, then it cannot be outside the margin. It has to be starting a margin. That's what the Brisa says. Don't write 2 letters in the margin and 3 letters outside the margin if it's a 5-letter word. We go to Mabez, you write 3 in the margin and 2 outside the margin. But if it's a word that has 2 letters, so then don't put it in between the 2 columns. You write it at the beginning of a line, like the word al. You can't put it on the end of the in between the margins. You have to start a new line with it. Says the Brisa, Hatoya b'shem. If you made a mistake and you forgot to put Hashem's name there, let's see if they have a example over here. Here we go. The pasuk is supposed to say the cholam is bechal baruch Hashem cheloi, right? So he forgot to write. So what are you going to do? So you erase the word cheloi, you put the Shem Hashem, and you put cheloi on top of it. So, and how do you erase it? You have to wait till the ink dries and then scrape it off. So it's a nice clean erase. That's what the Bryce is going to say. Hatoy b'shem. If you forgot to write the Shem Hashem, goyres ma'ashakosov, you erase what you wrote. You scrape away what dried, the toilet mashagara, and then you hang in the air of what the word that's supposed to be there, the word that you originally wrote there. The koisef is Hashem al mokem hagrad devrei Yehuda, and you write the Shem Hashem on the place where you scraped. So the Shem Hashem will be in the line, and what's hanging in the air will be the other word. Rabbi Yossi says, Af Toinos Hashem. You could put the Shem Hashem and hang it in between the lines. Rabbi Yitzchak Af Moichik v'Kaisef. Rabbi Yitzchak says you don't even have to wait till the ink dries. You could actually erase it and smudge it and write the Shem Hashem on top of it. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Rabbi Shimon says he essentially agrees with Rabbi Yossi, and he says Kol Hashem Kulei Toilet. You could put the entire Shem Hashem in between the lines. Miktsase ain't Toilet. But if let's say you wrote Yud K and you forgot to write the Vav K, you can't put Vav K on top in between the lines. So it's not going to work. Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Rab Meir, Ein Kaisvin Hashem, you don't write the Shem Hashem. He's the most strictest. Rab Meir says, once you miss the Shem Hashem, you put the whole piece into Shemus. You don't write the Shem Hashem, there's no way to correct that. Once you miss the Shem Hashem, what should you do? If you forgot the Shem Hashem, you take off the whole piece of parchment and you put it in Shemus. Itmar, Amar Rav Chananel, Amar Rav said, Halacha Toilinas Hashem. You could put the Shem Hashem in between the lines. Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rav Yisrael Bar Shmuel, Halacha Moichet v'Kaisef. You could actually write like exactly what Rabbi Yitzchak said. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Af Moichet v'Kaisef. So Shmuel says the halacha is like that. Moichik v'kaisef. Says the Gemara, the lema mar halacha kamar, ma halacha kamar. Why didn't Rav say the halacha is toilinus Hashem like Rabbi Yossi? Why didn't Rav say simply halacha Rabbi Yossi and Shmuel say the halacha is like Rabbi Yitzchak? And says the Gemara mishum the afchale, because there were different versions of who said what. Did Rabbi Yossi say what Rabbi Yitzchak said, or Rabbi Yitzchak said what Rabbi Yossi said? Because of that, therefore, they repeated what the halacha is. Rav said the halacha is toilinus Hashem, And Rav Shmuel said the halacha is moiche v'kaisef. Now for the final Gemara, just another 2 minutes. Amar Ravin Bachanina, Amar Ula, Amar Chanina. So Ravin said in the name of Ula, who said in the name of Rav Chanina, halacha k'shim suzuri. The halacha is like Rav Shimon Suzuri. Wherever Rav Shimon Suzuri you find him, you always paskin like Rav Shimon Suzuri. So presumably the halacha is like Rav Shimon Suzuri, that if it's the entire Shem, you could put it in between the lines, but mitzase ain't toilet. That would be the halacha of Rav Shimon Suzuri. But the Gemara doesn't understand that. Ahai, what was Ravin going on? In this case, Shimon Suzuri, I mean, call Shem Kula Kailim. Mitzase ain't Kailim, for Itma law. Amar Chanan Rav halacha toilet Shem. Rabba Bachanamar Shmuel Bar Oriyevskab Shmuel halacha k'moichek v'kaisev. Then Isa, if Ravin had an opinion that the halacha is like somebody else, like Rav Shimon Shazuri, who nami lema, he should be included into that teaching. That Rav said the halacha is this way, Shmuel says the halacha is this way, and Rav Chanina said, and Ravin said in the name of Rav Chanina, the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shazuri, and so must be that when Ravin and the son of Chanina said the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shazuri, he was going on a different Rav Shimon Shazuri, not under the conversation what we're discussing. Ella aha. On this following case, Rav Shimon Shazuri says that if you shecht an animal, it's pregnant. So the halacha is that the animal, the embryo that after you shecht the animal does not need shechita. And Rav Shimon Shazuri said, "Afilu ben chamesh, even if this animal, this embryo grew up to be 5 years old, the chayrish besada, shechitas imay metaharutai." The shechting of the mother was enough. You could kill the animal and eat it because it doesn't need shechita anymore. Because when you shechted the animal, the mother was pregnant with this embryo, and was born after the shechita. So the shechita of the mother was effective on this child. Allah. If that was where we say the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shazuri, wait a second. Allah. Then Isa, if this is true, that Ravin Bar Chanina also paskin like Rav Shimon Shazuri, Hunami Lema. Let it say Zeiri said the name Rav Chanina halakha Rav Shimon Shazuri, and Ravin also said in the name of Rav Chanina halakha Rav Shimon Shazuri, and the Gemara doesn't say that over there. So again, Ravin must be referring to a different Rav Shimon Shazuri that we paskin like. Again, Ella, maybe it's going on this. Aha, but you used to say that if somebody goes, he's all chained up, and they're taking him out to execution. And he writes, write a get for my wife. We follow it through. We write a get and we give it to his wife. They said that this is these commands are enough if somebody is going on to a long caravan and he's starting to travel and he calls out to the people staying in the city, write a get for my wife. Even a guy who's in danger, okay, there's a good chance that he's going to die. If he screams out, write a get for my wife, we will write a get for his wife. Okay. So again, what the Gemara is going to say, and we'll stop over here, but what the Gemara is going to say over here, the halacha, if this is what Ravin said, the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shazuri over here, so then if that was the case, then we should have said the same idea. We're going to say, if Ravin was saying halacha Rav Shimon Shazuri, then huname lema. So he should be included into the statement. Shmuel bar Nachmani said in the name of Yochanan halacha Rav Shimon Shazuri, and you know who agrees with him? Ravin bar Chanina in the name of Chanina halakha Rav Shimon Shazuri. So basically, what the Gemara is trying to discover, where did Ravin bar Chanina say in the name of Ula, say the name of Hanina, halacha Karab Shimon Shazuri. Where was he the only one to teach us this din? Halacha is Karab Shimon Shazuri. Okay, we'll stop over here.